4 ways to sell any prospect faster, better, and easier. This is something that is lost in all sales training. It's not in the book I've been highlighting, in Jerry's book, but I want to talk about it because this is the sequence to write copy in the written word, spoken word, visual word. This is what I do all the time. Like I always talk about the what and the why and the who and the how, right? Because there are really 4 personas that comes through the light version of what's called Myers-Briggs assessment. Originally, it came through Carl Jung. And before Carl Jung, it came through Hippocrates, going back thousands of years. So if this is a new term, stay with me and watch this again, read this again, listen to it again. The first person that I want you to focus on is the competitive. That's what it's called, the competitive. There are many different numbers and words and colors, but the competitive decides quickly and it's based on logic. So quick decision making and logical. That's all they need. So you got to tell them what the heck it is you're selling. They need to know the context of it. They need to know what it is. For example, don't talk theory. Don't talk about who else uses it. Don't talk about how it works. Get rid of the competitive first. The logical person who decides quickly. Those guys are great, but they're ignored and they get impatient and they leave. Now you think I'm emotional, right? I decide on logic and I decide quickly. I'm a competitive. That's how I show up. The next person, the next type, and you're all 4 of these, your prospects are probably all 4, but the spontaneous in this tradition decides quickly but emotionally. Imagine what your heart feels like when you press on the accelerator and everyone is watching you pass them on the freeway when you exceed the speed limit by over 40 miles an hour. That's what you can get out of this BMW M4 convertible. Okay. So that is me going overboard, so you understand that's caricaturizing it. That is quick and emotional. You won't sell a competitive that way. You won't. The way you sell a competitive is you say, okay, ma'am, do you drive a car because you need transportation, or do you drive a car because you love to drive? What are the reasons why you buy a car? Transportation or you love to drive? Just transportation. Great. Then this BMW M4 convertible, silver, custom made from Germany, $90,000 is not for you. You can get similar accessories and just as good of a car and spend $40,000 less and feel good about it. That's how you sell a competitive, or at least get referrals from a competitive. That particular example is in Jerry's book, only it's about a BMW and an Infiniti. Now, Infiniti is a type of car. Humanistic, you go after them third. Don't start with the who. Like, for example, the competitor needs to know what. Logical and fast. The spontaneous needs to know why. Why? Why should I buy it? Why should I buy it, right? That's because it's emotional and fast. The humanistic is slow, but emotional. Emotional. Testimonials. Who else has benefited? How has it saved humanity? Global warming. I'm just being general. I don't want to be political. I'll lose half of my audience, right? They're emotional. Now, humanistic, I attract a lot of humanistics to my company. The humanistic is the largest group that I attract for my training because they feel my heart when I'm training. Hopefully you feel my heart. Some people call it passion. Although I'm a competitive, I know how to communicate with my heart. I don't make decisions emotionally. I make them logically, but I know how to sell to people who make emotional and logical decisions. So the humanistic, they're slower and they make them emotionally. So you can't push them because they'll be afraid. So it's not a safe environment, maybe on the first interaction or the second or the third. And then there's my favorite, the methodical. Okay, this is not the tortoise, as in the tortoise and the hare, but this person decides slowly and based on logic. If you give a lot of logic, if you give a lot of case studies, if you give a lot of details, and you cascade and just dogpile that logic and end with emotion, you'll get a methodical to say yes. I also attract methodicals because I believe I don't offend them like other people who do what I do. Now, here are the key points. There are questions that these four personas talk about. The first question is the competitive. They want to know what. Just tell me what it is. And a presentation, if you're in a room, or let's say you're on a webinar, get rid of the what fast. Tell them the what. If you're a humanistic, don't talk about who else uses it. Get rid of the what, define it, give them the logic they need. They'll keep listening. All right. Next, spontaneous. Why? You got to go to why. I don't like to start with why, like Simon Sinek, who's much smarter than I am, has the most viewed TEDx talk, I think, of all time. But I don't start with why. I start with what. And I immediately go to why. And it doesn't take that long because I don't want to lose the competitives. Do you see? Okay. The only universal rule is that there is no universal rule. You can write that down. I will say it again. The only universal rule or law is there is no universal rule or law. There always is a contradiction. Quantum physics, general relativity. Niels Bohr, Albert Einstein. Both are true, but there's nothing that's universal. See what I'm saying? And that's not a spiritual conversation. That's a factual conversation based on logic, according to Alex Mandossian. And because you're still watching, I'm going to give you something. So first, the competitive says what? The spontaneous says why? The humanistic says who? Who else? Who will this impact? And the methodical says, how does it work? Just tell me, how does it work? The humanistic has a problem selling to methodicals because they want someone else to take care of the how. They just want to know, well, if it works for them, it'll work for me. How is important, but that's not why I'm buying, right? How is important, but it's not why I'm buying. The competitive, if I don't know what it is, I'm out. Forget the bathroom break. I'm out. I'll leave the room. On a webinar, I'm gone. For the spontaneous, it's why. And you want to go in that order: competitive, spontaneous, humanistic, methodical. This is the system I use. I wasn't taught this. I was taught bits and pieces of it. Now, there are certain things for you to say during that safe buying environment. You've developed a safe buying environment. That's the D at Delta. You're engaging in meaningful dialogue. That's the E in Delta. You're learning the predicaments and wants of your prospect. That's the L of Delta. You are telling stories that fit based on the intelligence you've gathered. That's the T in Delta. And you're asking for a specific commitment appropriate to how far you've gone.